This is Support is Sexy, episode 76, with Chirsty Haussler, founder of Team Podcast. Welcome to the Support is Sexy podcast. I'm your host, Elayne Fluker, entrepreneur, author, producer, and founder of Chic Rebellion Media. 5 days a week, Monday through Friday, I talk to women entrepreneurs who share their journeys and the true stories of their wins and their lessons, and give you insight and inspiration to take your business and your life to the next level. Here we go. Hi, everyone. Welcome to a new episode of Support is Sexy. I'm so excited to have you here. It just would not be the same without you. So today we're welcoming Chirsty Haussler, and Chirsty is the founder of a company called Team Podcast, which is a production and strategy company for podcasts. And she has produced more than 40 shows, or she produces currently 40 shows and does more than 200 episodes a month. And the reason I really wanted to have Chirsty on is because, one, she's a great person. We're also in a group together called Podcasters Paradise with a bunch of podcasters. And Chirsty is just a wealth of information. She's always willing to share. She's an incredible resource, very knowledgeable about podcasts, obviously, because she does so many of them. And she's just a great resource. So I really wanted to speak with her and have her share some of her background on how she got into podcasts, but also some of the learnings that she's had about doing her own podcast, which is called the Brick and Mortar Podcast, but also helping other people build their brands, build their podcasts, utilize it as a new platform, especially since I started doing my show and started hearing from a lot of people I know personally who want to launch a podcast, who have a lot of great questions, who want to know things that I want to know as well. So we decided to invite in Chirsty and have her share her insight with us. So on this episode, you'll learn how to recognize when you're on the right track, also knowing that you're one decision away from a completely different life, why your network is your key to success, also how podcasts offer new opportunities no matter your industry, the importance of marketing to increase your list and engagement. Don't get caught up in the downloads, which everyone does. We all get caught up in the numbers, but Chirsty says do not get caught up in the downloads. Also, the 3 common podcasting mistakes many women make, why podcasting isn't just for monetizing, and how to engage your audience and make them feel invested in your brand and your product. So a lot of great information in here. If you're interested in podcasts, considering it, thinking about launching your own, or just curious, this is for you. You're going to love it either way. So without further ado, Chirsty Haussler. So Chirsty, thank you so much for joining us on an episode of Support is Sexy. I'm excited to have you here.
Thanks so much. Glad to be here.
Excellent. Now I have to ask you the first question I ask everyone. When did you first fall in love with entrepreneurship?
Oh, I came by it accidentally. I kind of always knew that the corporate jobs were never truly satisfying. You know how it is. You get a job and you think, oh my gosh, I got my new job. This is so exciting. And then like 2 weeks later, you're like, are you kidding me? I have to do this for the next 40 years or whatever till I retire. So I never had the guts to jump out and do it. So it took me a long time kind of maturing in the business world and in my roles in corporate jobs before I realized, you know what, I keep thinking I'm better than my boss anyway, so why don't I get out there and prove it? You know how it is.
Right. Now, what industry were you in? Were you in a specific industry in corporate America?
Well, I went to college to be a teacher and very quickly realized I didn't quite have the patience for that. Mm-hmm. And so I switched to business. And so I ended up being like a call center manager for corporations, Fortune 500 companies, Verizon, MCI, WorldCom, all of the ones that we no longer hear of anymore, except for Verizon. Mm-hmm. They stuck it out. And then also managed customer relations for several small companies that also had like in-house call center type things.
Now, where did you grow up? I hear your beautiful Southern accent.
Yeah, I was born and raised in Alabama and went to college in South Carolina and kind of stayed in the South Carolina area after college. So I've got more than half my life spent in South Carolina and the first half in Alabama. So it's a Carolina Alabama mix.
Alabama. My parents are from Alabama, so we love Alabama people. Yes, ma'am.
Nice. Yeah, my dad's a space nerd, so we were always around. He worked for NASA, so we're from Huntsville. So
Huntsville, nice. Now, what was a young Chirsty like?
Oh, a young Christy was a rule follower, a good girl, never rebelled against my parents. I grew up and was raised in a very conservative Christian home. I went to private and or Christian schools all my life and even went to Christian college. And so definitely was taught to obey the rules, stay within the parameters, behave, all of those things that in some way can handicap an entrepreneur,
I was going to say, it's so interesting that one of the things you wanted to do too was get out of the
my inner rebel
lines.
waited a long time to finally free herself.
Right. You could no longer suppress her. Now, who were some of your greatest influences growing up?
My parents were definitely great, great influences. My dad is one of those guys that can do anything. I mean, if you want to talk geek stuff, he can talk geek stuff, or you want to talk sports stuff, he can talk sports stuff. And it always amazed me at how well-rounded he was. And I kind of always aspired to be that way because I'm kind of one of those people that have a lot of different interests. And so he was a huge inspiration to me. And that's my main one. I mean, my mother passed away when I was 16, so I had a good bit of time, spending being influenced by her. But as an adult, I don't know, can't look back now and see what those influences were because I didn't know her in an adult way.
Now, you said when you went to school, you went at first to be a teacher and then switched to business.
Well, I didn't switch to business until after, I got my degree in teaching.
Oh, you got a degree in teaching.
So I went out, and after I started my teaching job, I quickly realized, wait a minute, for the money, I don't have the patience for this. I thought I've got to switch my career, not necessarily my study program, to business. So
okay. So at what point did you say, you said you started to get that feeling that, I need to go out on my own and try something on my own. How far into your career were you at that point?
I'll be honest with you. I grew up with the impression that when you got out of college, you got a good job,
right,
and you worked for the same company for 35 years and you retired. And the reason I thought that was because that was what my dad did with NASA. He got out of college, got recruited by NASA, moved to Huntsville, worked there for 35 years and retired. And I quickly found out when I started seeing the corporate structure and how they would lay you off at any, we would go through this yearly, it seemed like, the cull, it's like the reduction in force. It's a RIF week and everyone's worried about their jobs. And I began to think, this is not the same America my dad grew up in, and that's, the expectations were different. So it took me a while to have the courage to go out and do something on my own, and I kind of forced my hand. When about 3 years ago, I took a crazy leap and moved from where I was living and working in South Carolina, left my six-figure, corporate job with the full benefits and all that kind of thing, and relocated to Key West to live on an island and completely reinvent myself. And so by doing that, it really put me in the hustle mode, when your back is up against the wall and you think, okay, I just lost all of my household income. I'm now at a place where the main industry is tourism. What the heck am I going to do with myself? And by that time I had already fallen in love and started podcasting. And so from there, it just kind of grew into something that, is what I do now, which is a full-time, have a full-time podcast production company. So it took me until I was, well into my 40s before I had the guts to fully depend on me for a paycheck, because that's scary. I tried several jobs right after college trying to get into business. And a lot of them were like sales jobs, and, a lot of them were like full commission. And, you just, that starting over at zero every single week wasn't something my self-confidence was ready for at that point. So
nice. Now, you learn and you grow. Now, what was the thing, the catalyst, or was there a one thing, one event, one moment that happened that made you say, you know what, I'm doing this, I'm making a leap? Because it's a pretty big leap, and there are tons of people listening, I'm sure, who want to make some kind of change, and it's just they're waiting, or they're scared, or waiting for permission.
And the cool thing about it is entrepreneurs look at that leap and go, oh my God, that was an awesome leap. And the rest of the world looks at it and goes, that is the craziest midlife crisis I've ever seen.
Exactly. What's wrong? Yeah.
Right. So the biggest thing for me, and I'll be honest with you, I was in a job I had been for the last 5 years that I was working for someone else. I was driving more than 2 hours each way to get to work.
Wow.
And so that's kind of how I fell in love with podcasting, because I was looking for something to keep me awake on that drive, that long, boring drive. And so I found podcast after I'd listened to every audiobook in the library. And one of the things that I realized is, as things went along with this company, even as I was driving 2 hours to work, they picked up and moved the company a little further across town, so, for a new location. So that now took me through 45 additional minutes of traffic. And so now I'm looking at 2 hours and a half, 2 hours and 45 minutes to get to work. And there were several things as far as compensation wise. We got like this, busy season hard work bonus, and I was pitted against every other manager that was there, but realizing that my time and availability was sorely limited because I had a 2.5 to 3 hour drive home every day, so you spend that kind of time in the car. Everyone else was able to spend that time working, and I didn't get any sort of accommodation for that. And it wasn't that I wanted to be treated differently, but I just thought, what? My situation does not matter to these people. And it's not that it was a bad company. They were just business people, know? And I realized that I am spending 4+ hours a day in my car, using this time to start learning and getting used to podcasts and learning everything you can learn. And it was like a whole world opened up to me. So I used that automobile university time, 4 hours a day, to learn what I needed to know. And that yearning and that desire to kind of do my own thing began to get a little more emboldened each time I'd find a new podcast about, how can you do this or that? And so it just really, when I realized that the majority of my time is being spent in the car, not appreciated by anyone, and I didn't have fulfillment in the job I was doing, I thought, really, I don't have anything to lose to make the leap. But I always wanted to live in a tropical place where we were, in an endless summer climate, And so it came about. And, what I decided to do, it's always a little scary to make crazy decisions and do crazy, off the wall things that your family thinks you're crazy for doing. But I just said, what, I'm going to go ahead and it's going to take the next step. And if that door opens, and then the door opens in front of me and the door opens behind that door, I'm just going to keep walking through those open doors. And if the door closes, the door shuts in my face, then I'll know that wasn't what I was supposed to do. And it never shut. It didn't shut at all. Every door came in. It was like everything I needed to make it happen, I got like way better than I thought I needed. You know what I mean? It's like, I need to know who this person is so I can make contacts to this, that, and the other. And I got the leveled up person. Right. It's like every single thing was taken care of. And so when you start seeing that sort of thing fall in line, for me, I know that's divine intervention, ordering my path. Other people might say it's the universe, the law of attraction and things like that. Whatever it is, I saw it on full display. And in my mind, I was kicking myself for not having the courage to do it sooner. Because I think if I had done it years earlier, that same thing would have happened. Doesn't mean you don't have failures, and it doesn't mean it's not scary. But when you see it line up like that and you think, if I had tried to do this on my own, it would have taken me 3 years to orchestrate this move. However, whenever you're kind of in your path and doing what you're supposed to be doing, it happens. And you don't really, even looking back, you don't really logically understand how it happened. That's like, so you ever had those months where it's like, okay, if I try to balance everything on the checkbook, it's going to come up short, but somehow I still have money in my account.
Right.
Exactly. I don't really know how it happened. I'm
exactly.
not going to dig in too deep because I don't really want to know. But that's the kind of thing that happens with that.
That's an amazing story. And I think it's so powerful what you said, too, about just taking that next step. That I always talk about the next right move. That's really all you can do. You kind of plan and see what's going to happen. You never know how it's going to unfold. You never know what's going to show up for you. As you said, things started to come. I think for you, it sounds like once you finally made that decision, it's sort of like, okay, the universe, divine order, we're going to put some things in place to support you. And as you said, it doesn't mean there's no failures, but it does show you in different ways. You know what? I think I'm on the right track here.
Yeah, and it was summed up. I was just listening to editing a podcast yesterday, and I had to listen to it to edit it. And one of the things that was said was, you are one decision away from a completely different life. If you make that decision, and that was, and that was I resonated with that because that was me. I made that one decision. Now, once I made the decision and I kind of pulled it off and came out not looking like a complete idiot, packing my bags and coming home, hitchhiking or anything like that. Then I had friends that go, "Oh, you're so lucky. You're so lucky that happened to you."
Right.
And I'm like, "Hold on. It could happen to you too, but you have to make the decision to do it." It didn't, I didn't have any advantage. I didn't have a big savings account. I didn't have any fallback plan. But you just have to be willing to walk away from whatever and know that however you land with whatever you land with is going to be okay, because it's not about the material possessions. It's not about the creature comforts and all those things that you have. In some ways, they trap you in the life you really don't want anyway. But having the ability to say, okay, even if it gets really bad, I can ditch all this stuff, and I'll do what I have to do. And when you get in that mindset, a lot of times you make it happen before you have to ditch all the stuff,
right.
Or you make it happen before the worst case scenario happens. And then you go, wow, I can't believe that happened.
Right. I can't believe it worked out. Now, what was the first step you say, or first thing you did with planning before you move? Obviously, finding a place was one thing, but just even if mentally, was there something that you did to help yourself get in that mindset of moving? Because I'm about to relocate from New York to Georgia.
Okay.
To me, my parents.
Oh, that's going to be a culture shock.
That's
there
going to
you
be
go.
a little bit of a move. I've been down there. My folks live in outside of Atlanta, but I'm excited about it. But it is still a big. It's a move.
It was crazy because we came to visit Key West on vacation, and it's one thing. We came a couple of times, but one of the second time that we came, we actually got. Somehow, through some crazy situation, we ended up getting very connected to a couple of local people that for the entire vacation we were here, they basically treated us like other local people that lived here too, and so we really got to pick their brains about it and get some realistic feedback and input. And then that starts turning over in your brain as, is it a possibility? Could we do it? Is it something that could happen? And the more you start thinking about it, the more you become discontent with where you are. It's like the more you make that decision to go, oh yeah, I'm going to Georgia, the more New York's going to get on your nerves.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Which New York can definitely do. Yeah.
Exactly. So yeah, nothing against New York, but wherever
but it's a stressful place.
Yes.
Yeah.
So it's just one of those things that once that you shift that in your mind, then you sort of know it's all but inevitable, and you just got to work out the details.
So what has it been like for you after, how long ago did you make this move? You said 3 years?
We are, the end of the year, we're starting our 4th year.
Right.
So we're finishing up our 3rd year down here.
Okay. So you've been there a little bit, settled in. What was, how has the change been for you?
Well, the change has been great. The environment down here is fantastic. The community is very open. It's a very eclectic, very live and let live, very laid back. I mean, you'll see someone that looks like a beach bum and you find out they're like a nuclear physicist with, that they have to fly to Berlin every month to, speak at big conferences or whatever. And you're like, really? I just thought you were my like surfer friend or a beach bum kind of person.
Right.
It's just a very laid back small town. I live on an island that has 8,000 people in it. And so we can get on each other's nerves. It can get a little small sometimes. Then closer to Cuba than we are to Walmart. So we
Nice.
depend on Amazon Prime a lot. So, but it's better. My life is immensely better than what it was prior to. And I wouldn't have imagined that I could work so hard for someone else and make so little money. And then I'm still working that same amount, but I'm working for myself, and I'm working for things that are, the buck stops with me and my name is on it. And so when you do that, you get all the reward. I mean, you get all the risk, but you get all the reward for that too. And so knowing that, I just wish I had been confident enough 20 years ago to do the same thing, because I can't imagine where I would be. I mean, I feel like I'm a late bloomer.
I feel like
Right,
that
because
too sometimes.
here I am in my mid 40s, and I'm like, hey, I just got in the entrepreneurial game a little while ago,
Right.
and those kids that when I see the kids that are 23, 25, whatever they are, getting out of college and immediately starting to do their own thing, that's when I see the shift has taken place societally too, because they're not expected to go out and get a job with one company anymore. No one wants to be stifled with that anymore and buy a house and live in the same place. I mean, everyone wants to be mobile. They want to be laptop entrepreneurs, and it's it's just a blessing to be able to be part of that, and to be consider myself the same thing because I can really work anywhere. Got to have an internet connection, but
Exactly. It can work
work
anywhere. That's what
anywhere.
I
Yeah.
say. That's what it's
As
all
long
about
as
for
I
me
have an
now, too.
internet
I can work
connection.
from anywhere. It's on the grass as long as there's Wi-Fi nearby.
Absolutely. And there's
Um,
freedom in that. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's a little bit of a ball and chain too, because hey, I can go on vacation and I still can work. Wait a minute, why am I working on
right.
vacation? But
Exactly.
but it happens. And that old saying where it says, being an entrepreneur means you have the freedom to choose which 20 hours a day you work.
Exactly. That's what people
And
say. It's
that's
not less
exactly,
work. People think, oh, I want to be an entrepreneur so I don't have to work as hard. But
yeah,
actually, yeah.
it's
But you
more.
just
Yeah.
enjoy it in a different way.
Yeah, you do.
And I would
Definitely.
say too for you, I know what you mean about because I feel like that sometimes like, oh, if I had just known this 10 years ago, or if I had just stuck with something I was already doing 10 years ago and sold that business, I have all. But
Yeah.
it's one of those things. But you wouldn't have all this information that you have now. You wouldn't have, have all the
Those
experience.
lessons are pivotal in
Exactly.
setting you up for where you're ultimately going. And even though you don't know, that's part of the journey and part of the path. I mean,
Right.
and the interesting thing is, even I can see my own personal metamorphosis from when I began on the entrepreneurial journey. I mean, I began as a podcaster. I was working my full-time job, but I began doing podcasts, and my thought was I could sit in my basement and I can call people on Skype whenever they say yes, they'll do an interview with me, and I'll talk to them, and then I'll put it out there on the internet, and no one really has to know who I am. No one really has to see me. No
Mm.
one. I don't have to really talk to people, and it scared me to death. Whenever I would get in certain Facebook groups with other podcasters or other people in my niche, and some people would say, "Hey, let's jump on a Skype call," and I'm like, "Oh no, why do you want to call me? Why can't we just email about it?"
Right.
And now so much of my day is spent jumping on a Skype call, saying, "Hey, yeah, let's get or let's just connect because we might have some commonalities where we can help each other." I had
Hmm.
no idea that whole world existed,
And it
and
opens up a whole other
it's
world to you.
absolutely key to success. People say it again and again, your network is your key to success. Man, it's true. It
It's
is absolutely
true.
true. Yeah. And I'm not a professional networker. I'm not even great at it, but networking online does little bit less intimidating factors than,
Right, exactly.
than
Now,
in person.
how did you end up? How did you decide then to set up your podcast business, which is called
You know,
Team Podcast? You
Yeah,
should
it's
tell
called Team
everyone.
Podcast,
Yeah.
and I definitely did the whole thing where I could not find the company I wanted to hire, so I created it, and we're heading into our we're about 2.5 years in right now to that, and so um, whenever I started, I found out that it was the way podcasting worked was everyone had their little specialty. If you wanted to hire it out, which I was doing a 5-day a week podcast that was interviews and working a full time job, so I needed some help. So I found out, oh, you can get somebody to edit your show, and you have to hire them, and you have to deal with them. And then you can get somebody to do the graphics for your show, and you have to hire them, and you have to work with them. Then you have to find somebody to do your show notes, and oh, you got to train them and do all that. And then so now what happened is now instead of just doing my show myself, I had to do my show and manage 3 other people or 4 other people that were trying to do all these parts and pieces. And then every time it turned around, the rules were changing. The price is this, but that was for 30 minutes, and this show went longer. So now it's this, or, this show is extra hard to edit, so now the price changes. Always hitting a moving target. And
Mm-hmm.
it didn't feel easy as a customer to me. It didn't feel easy as a client. And so I thought there's got to be a better way to do this. What if I took some of my retirement money and hired 3 or 4 set positions that I knew I would need to provide all of these services, and then began sort of getting my friends and other people to sort of let this team deal with their, projects. And then so that way it kind of started out as like, let's sort of split the cost, you know what I mean? Or let's sort of share the cost, and I'll train them and we'll get them all, taken care of. And then from there, it just kind of grew into Now we do, I guess, as far as shows go, we probably do about 200 plus shows a month for about 200 so episodes a month for about 40 different shows. And we
Wow.
have a team of 9 now. So, and then myself. So yeah, we're growing at a rapid pace, which is, I'm astounded. It's a huge blessing.
Now, is it your full-time focus now?
It is my full time. It's more than my full time. It's my
Yeah,
full
that's a lot
time
of
and my
shows
part time and
all the
it's my
time.
whole life. I sleep, eat, and breathe all this. I wake up in the middle of the night thinking, did we forget something? Or it
Hmm.
just you never really leave it. And so yeah, so I haven't had a day off in over 2 years now. So one of these days though, I'm going to do it. I'm going to put that vacation notification on my email.
Hmm.
I'm gonna go. I'm gonna do something for a
Are,
vacation.
yeah. Are you loving it though? I should tell everyone, Christy and I
I
are in a group together. Podcast is
Yes.
Paradise, which is how we met. So we love podcasts, but are you loving
Yes,
the business side of it?
I do. I do. And you know that the coolest thing to me is being able to see my clients fulfill their dreams through their podcasts. And some of them come with podcasts that they want to be a part of their business, and others come with a hobby that they would say, like I'm an accountant by day, but my heart is helping people, mothers that are women that are going through infertility or whatever,
Mm.
because I've been through that, or domestic abuse, or whatever they're going through. And so to see them be able to take that and turn that either into a part-time income, a replacement income. I mean, I've seen several people leave their jobs. I mean, I'm talking good paying jobs like pharmacists and other, good paying jobs, to go and do their own thing and have that freedom that they always wanted. And it's kind of interesting from where I'm working. It doesn't really matter what the industry is. I see doctors, I see lawyers, I see psychiatrists, I see all these other people that have gone to school and spent a whole lot of money on education,
Hmm.
only to get into the actual role of the career that they always wanted, to say, this really isn't what I thought it was. It's not really what I thought it was going to be. And this is really boring to me now. And they're seeking more.
Hmm.
And that's kind of where podcasting comes in. So it's my greatest success is seeing the success of my clients in that way. And I couldn't be prouder of the ones that have, there's a certain amount of pod fading that happens with every every segment of podcasting, but the ones that stick it out, and 6 months, a year, 2 years down the road, those are the people that are making things happen.
What do you think it is about podcasts that really draws people to it? I mean, I have my own theories, but what do you think it is, or what have you
Yeah,
seen? Because you have actually experience working
yeah,
with.
and in some ways, I don't necessarily think it's a good perception, because I think people perceive podcasting as something that's easy to do. Like, hey, I love to be behind the mic, or hey, I've always pretended I was Janet Jackson with the microphone, and all
Right.
that kind of stuff. And I could do that, or I can talk as long as I don't have to be on camera. I'm fine. Or I like talking to people, and I have this knowledge, and so you feel like it's an easy thing to do. But what you don't realize when you start is that it really is a form of internet marketing. So if you're not familiar with how internet marketing works, and email collection and course building and membership sites and all these other things, and how to, run, have a social media strategy, and you're like, what? I'm on Facebook. Does that count?
Right.
It's not the same thing. And so to be able to put all of those pieces together, it can be overwhelming in the beginning if you know about it. But if you don't know about it, you go in blind and completely unprepared. And I think in some ways, the John Lee Dumases of the world, he's been so successful at what he did, and he has made other people realize it can be done. But in some ways, that's a really bad thing, because now everyone thinks they can do it. And the same way, every child is not going to grow up to be the Michael Jordan on the basketball court. There has to be a little bit of reality in there. And with podcasters, we all think that if we just put it out there and put it on iTunes, people will find us. And iTunes has billions of users, or whatever many you think they are, and they'll find you. And pretty soon you will just have millions of people wanting your content. And it is not like that at all.
Right.
So it's like reality sets in, and then people become so disappointed when they think, man, I only got 3,000 people to listen to my show this past month. And in my mind, I think, if you called 3,000 people to a stadium and they all came to sit and listen to you speak, would you not feel a little bit honored?
Right.
You know, that's a great
That's
audience.
another thing too, not getting caught up comparing with numbers.
Yeah. Any pastor would love to speak to 3,000 people a week in their churches. They're like, why do I only have 200? It's the same type thing with podcasting. You know, and there's a vacuum as far as real legitimate data, as far as how well your show is doing. You know, you get caught up on numbers that are many times vanity metrics. And in my mind, it's not about the downloads. It's about how much is your email list growing and how much is your audience engagement, you know, increasing, and over time building that community, so to speak, around what you're doing with your show.
Is that something that you also work with your clients with team podcasts? I know you do sort of the back end and getting the shows edited, but do you also do consulting for them as well?
Yeah, we do, because what I find so many times is that people, there's kind of this pattern that I see over time after working with so many people, you know, on their podcasts, and that if they are hiring us to do their podcast production and we've taken that off their plate, but they're not dialed in to how to monetize or how to make their podcast accomplish whatever the goal it is, whether it's to build a platform, build their email list or whatever, then they're ultimately going to not stick with it. So then I lose a client on the back end. So it sort of behooves me to help them be successful. And so one of the things we really work on is trying to get people to the point where we're dialed into what is the next step. And I got off a call yesterday. It was supposed to be a lady needed help knowing how to ID3 tag her files because she felt like she wasn't getting as much reach and as much SEO value as she wanted to. And she heard that she might be able to increase it by tagging. So we went through that. And then we started this whole other discussion about how to increase her audience. And we sat and had another hour conversation about it. And her mind was absolutely blown. And she's like, oh my God, this is like podcast therapy, because I don't even think like this. Like, I don't even know what's possible. And I think especially for women, we feel many times like we have to be given permission to, and I hear it all the time from my clients. I didn't know I could do that. Oh, I didn't know I was allowed to do that, you know? And I understand that mentality because I came from that follow the rule. Here's our rigid black and white list of things you can and can't do to be accepted in society. And once you become a podcaster, you kind of have to say, there is no box. I'm going to be as creative as I can do to accomplish this. And I don't really care if anybody else is doing this. If I can work out something that works for me and whoever else is in, the mix with it, then that's okay. And so we definitely love doing those strategy sessions, because I get off the phone or off the Skype call with those people and they're like, oh my God, my mind is going 1,000 directions and I'm so excited about this again. Right. And it's like you reignite that passion, because you can get beat down with the slog of content production. Absolutely. And feeling like you're, saying, hello, is anybody out there? I don't know if people are listening or liking or hating or what. And so you kind of have to be prepared to stick it out through that, and then be very intentional about the ways you are going to get in touch with your listeners and the ways that you are going to be everywhere that your listeners are. And that's kind of, one of those things we love helping people with.
Excellent advice. Now, you mentioned, especially with women, and, our show reaches out to women entrepreneurs and creatives and people who are looking at different ways of getting their voice out there through podcasts or however. What would you say are 3 of the mistakes either that you remember making in the beginning or that you've seen some of your other women clients make around podcasting or the idea especially of permission?
Yeah, I see it all the time. And one of the things that I think so many women struggle with is self-promotion. And it's very, we either tend to be on one extreme or the other. We tend to be like, we're that girl that's like, I am the hottest, I am the best, I am the most desired. Or we're like, I'm a worm, I am nothing. Exactly. I can't do anything right.
Don't look at me. Yeah.
Exactly. And we don't want to draw attention to ourselves. And so I think so many times people don't realize with a podcast that being self-promotional is one thing. But whenever you're providing value, and it's free value, if you are doing it to your target audience that needs it, then you have much wider berth than someone who's just spamming, saying, hey, listen to my show. You're going to love it. Listen to my show. I don't know what you need, but here's what I've got, and It doesn't work that way. And so giving yourself the freedom to be self-promotional when it's necessary. If you have a podcast, you need to be everywhere that your avatar, your target listener is. And every time they turn around, and that might be in your local area, it might be online, anywhere you can be, but begin to cultivate those relationships that will allow you to form value-based partnerships that can then lead you right to your target audience. And before you know it, it's not really a sales pitch. It's a let me help you with your problems. And I have a few other resources, and let me give you a card to show you where they are. And you give people a card that says, hey, here's my podcast. And before you know it, you've opened up the whole world of podcasting to them, because many of them aren't even aware of the podcasting. So being self-promotional or struggling to be self-promotional is one thing that women struggle with. The other thing that I think so many women struggle with is that there is a technology barrier. And, a lot of times women struggle with the technology. And if you don't have the aptitude or don't have the patience or don't have the knack for technology, you really are better off hiring out those aspects of it, because those will be what slow you down and will keep you from ever getting your podcast launched.
And usually it's just fear of doing. It's not even that you aren't
seems
able.
So
it's
big
just,
and
so
overwhelming.
Right,
yeah.
Exactly.
Or you're confused, or maybe you've got conflicting stuff and you don't know. You got to a certain point and the roadblock happened and you got frustrated and you walked away and you're afraid to go back to it because that roadblock is still there.
Right.
And so many times it's reaching out for help when you get that way. And even if you have to pay for it, I mean, there's not many businesses that you can start with zero money out of your pocket. And so especially if you're wanting them to rival replacing your full-time income, right? It's not realistic for me to say, I want to start a business today. I have no audience. I have no budget. I have nothing but the equipment to start it with. And by next year, I want it to replace my six-figure income. You've got to make an investment. And so many times I see, and I'll just be honest, and this might garner me some haters, and that's fine too. But many times from my end of what I see is, with women, we sometimes value things very differently. Like somebody might say to me, oh, Christy, I can't afford your services. I absolutely cannot afford your services. Or my budget is, $20 a week to get everything I need done for my show. It's just not going to happen. But when I look and they've got the Birkin bags and they got Christian Vuitton shoes and that sort of thing. And I think, you're putting in big money and big, dollars into things, or even, with the guys, it's the gear. They'll say, oh, I can't afford you. But then meanwhile, they're like, could you jump on a call with me and tell me what's going on with my $700 microphone?
Right.
Knowing that, good and well that we can get by on a $50 microphone. You know what I mean? So I see, what I see is the value misplaced, and people put more value on the hardware than they do in getting the help they need to fill that skills gap that they have. And I don't really want to work with clients that don't value my time or my expertise, or even what I can bring to them after working with more than 40 shows for 2.5 years to try to get those shows to be successful. If you don't value your time, you're not going to value my time. And so, being able to say that even as a podcaster, you don't want to just give advertising spots away if you don't have to. You don't want to just give content away and never ask for anything in return. So that's the second thing. And then the third thing is just having a plan for every aspect of your show, having a plan for how are you going to market it. Do you have a content calendar? Are you using looking at your content in such a way that you can use and repurpose the content that you're making, so that you can use it in one way in this situation with a podcast, and then you can create something else that will be for a membership site. And so being able to,
something like a course or something
like
that,
or an ebook or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just one of those things that you have to really plan and think out everything. And I have so many people that are like, let's just get launched and we'll deal with everything later. Well, you won't. If you're not dealing with it before the launch, you're not going to deal with it after. If you can't monetize your show whenever I'm helping you do your podcast production on the back end, you're not going to monetize it after you run out of money and you're doing it all, So
exactly.
Those are definitely some things to think about.
Excellent advice. And I think also one of the things is being clear, I think, on your goals change over time, but one of the things you mentioned about monetizing, I know some people go into it just to monetize it, but then there are other people, and you can let us know from your clients, that are just doing it to get their voice out there for their business. Like maybe they are a doctor, an attorney or something like that, and want to just be able to communicate with their customers or just offer value. It's not all about making money for everyone.
It's not all. And that's why, with podcasting, I say to be successful in whatever way you want it to be. There are some people that say, I need to build my platform because I need more credibility in my field.
Right.
Or I'm going to be writing a book next year, and I need to go ahead and start cultivating that following, and I need to start getting my content out there so I'll have a natural built-in audience when my book comes out. There are people that say, I need to network. I need to be able to have other people in my industry come on my show, and the best way for me to do that is to be the host of the podcast. And so it depends on what it is. I mean, podcasting can be whatever you need it to be. And I will say that you can get much more value from podcasts than just money. It can definitely change. It can change everything about, where you think your life is going and where you're heading by who you meet in the process. And even with the Podcasters Paradise group that we're in, I mean, the people you meet in there can absolutely get you to a different level.
Absolutely.
Because those are people you would never run into otherwise.
Right. Like me connecting with you, which I'm so happy about. Yeah. And even a lot of the other people in the group, or when you ask a question or you ask about guests, I've had people email me or privately message me and give me a whole list of guests of people to talk to.
Resources. Absolutely.
Resources. And
and that's the help, that you need to be able to get.
Right. I was just going to ask about that. This idea of support, which is what our show is all about. Support is sexy, and people being open to asking for support. How important is that for business owners in general, but podcasters especially, to not just be in the basement, as you said, talking into a mic and trying to figure it all out yourself?
Well, I did what I call the classic podcasting mistake, is that I, read everything I could online. I consumed podcasts. I thought I can do this. And I was under lots of misconceptions, based on, what I thought iTunes could do for me, lots of misperceptions about, what it took to get advertisers and that sort of thing. And, in my mind, I just thought it was going to, if you build it, they will come. Mm-hmm. And they didn't come. And it wasn't until I got to the end of everything I could do on my own, and I was frustrated, and I joined, the first group I joined was the Podcasters Paradise group. And so from that point on, it, like everything, took a different trajectory. And it's almost like, have you ever felt like, as an adult, if you could go back and redo high school or college again, that you would completely ace it because you get to a level of maturity? It's kind of the same thing in podcasting. It's like now that you join that group, now you see it and you're like, man, if I had it to do all over again, I could do it so much better, because you know more and you just reach a different plateau. And those people around you supporting you will help you do that if you make yourself available. Now, it doesn't really work the same if all you do. I mean, you can still get benefits by being a lurker in a group, which so many women do. They're like, finally coming out of the closet. I've been a lurker in this group for 2 years now, and I haven't launched anything. But, what you realize is there's a lot of people that make what they're doing in the groups intentional. You might not need other people's feedback on your artwork for your podcast, but what happens when you put it out there? You begin interacting with people, you begin having conversations with people, you begin getting feedback, and you know what else you've done? You've made them a little bit invested in your show. So then when you launch your show, people are cheering you on and they're going, you go, girl. Oh, I see you took my feedback on the artwork, and they're invested. And it's the same thing you do again and again with your listeners, You might not need their help naming a contest or naming a segment you're going to do, or you might not need their feedback to know exactly where you want to go with it. But when you open that door and say, hey, I was thinking about doing this. What do you guys think about that? You change the dynamic, and now you've invited them in. They feel ownership. They feel, they feel listened to. They feel heard. And you're to the point where you're now getting the support and the feedback you need to make decisions about your business.
That's so good. It makes, like you said, people feel ownership and a different way of engaging them. I know I started doing that on the podcast, giving out my email address and telling people to get in touch or leave comments and that kind of thing.
Yeah, because people won't do it. I mean, if you never ask for it, I mean, honestly, I have had people that have podcasts and they want to monetize. They desire to monetize it. In fact, some of them even have courses and membership groups and that sort of thing. But if you listen to the podcast, you would never, ever know it.
Right.
They won't mention it. They feel guilty talking about it. They don't want people to think they're just about the money. But the bottom line is there's got to be a value exchange between you and your listening audience, or you cannot, it's not sustainable, Right. So, it's interesting how that happens.
Now, when we were talking earlier about monetizing, what is your advice to your clients when you talk to them about monetizing their podcast? Meaning, do you tell them that it's getting to a certain number, or is it, do you talk about their goals for monetizing and what it should look like or could look like?
Sure. I basically talk to them about what they have in their mind. And then many times this is what I hear. A very typical thing is, well, I hadn't really thought about anything. I don't really have anything to monetize it right away, but I figured, maybe down the road, once I got enough listeners, I could get sponsorships or do some other things. And my next question is always, well, how will you know when that is? Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, I guess if I get a certain number of downloads, then maybe some sponsors would reach out to me. And that's not the way it works at all. I mean, the bottom line is no one is going to tap you on your shoulder one day and say, it's time to monetize. Today's the day. Right. The universe is giving you a gift because your number has been pulled for today. It doesn't happen that way. And so you have to plan it and you have to take every action. So if you do the old start with the end in mind, whenever you're planning your podcast, know how you want does it include a membership site? And there's, what I call internal and external ways to monetize. The external ways are whenever other people like companies are paying you. So that would be like sponsorships, affiliates, maybe even joint venture partnerships that you're doing with someone. Those are external ways to monetize. But the internal ways to monetize are through products and value that you create for your audience, whether it's a membership site, whether it's premium content, whether it's an app with, content that only is available through that app. It doesn't have a right or wrong answer to it. It can be anything that your audience finds a value that they're willing to pay for. In my mind, the best ways to monetize are several fingers in both of those channels. Mm-hmm. So you've got multiple, even if you have multiple small revenue streams, all you have to do is then grow them in order for it to be something sustainable. And it's like anything. Have you ever heard people say that it's easier to get a job when you have a job?
Right.
It's that once you've made your first dollar podcasting and once you've monetized in one way, it's easier to begin monetizing. So even if you've monetized by selling somebody something that's worth $3.99, it's easier to do that the second time once you've done it the first time. And so, monetizing is not a one-size-fits-all solution as far as everyone should get sponsors and everyone should do this and that. I've seen shows that have 350 downloads a month be monetized and cash flow positive. I've seen shows that have 30,000 downloads a month not make a dime. So it has nothing to do, and what it has to do with is how creative you are about finding the right way to monetize for your audience and for anyone else that would be interested in talking to your audience.
Right. Now, what would you say would be, of course, getting in touch with you and Team Podcast with finding out ways to monetize or grow your podcast is one way, but what do you feel are some of the other resources that people, if you could give to others, people could look to in order to find out information? Because you as a podcaster, I'm sure we listen to podcasts. We get tons of advice from groups but what are some other resources?
We do listen to podcasts, and one of my favorites is it's also a podcasting group. It's called She Podcasts, and it's Jessica and Elsie, and they're a co-hosted team, and they talk about all things related to podcasts, targeting specifically women. Mm-hmm. It's not going to be, it's their long form podcasts. So, it's a lot of, you get to see a lot of their personalities in with it as well. That's a great resource.
SHE?
It's SHE, and it's PODCASTS. And they do have a private Facebook group, but it's free to join. So you just request to join and you jump in there, and it's a great group for podcasting, for women especially. And, other than that, I like to listen to some things that keep you up to date on what is going on in the industry, and so there's really two other podcasts mainly that I love to listen to. One is Libsyn's podcast called The Feed.
Yes, that's a good one.
And you feel like you know a little bit more about, the whole podcast industry by listening to what's going on there. And then for my internet marketing and tips on anything to do with internet marketing, I love listening to Brandon Gailey's The Blog Millionaire. And he has a podcast called The Blog Millionaire, and every single show of his is completely packed with tips for how to optimize your website. What do you do for a blog post? And so many of those things, when they're talking about blog, can also substitute the word podcast because it's a very similar platform.
Okay, I hadn't heard of that one. That's great.
Yeah, it's really, really good.
Excellent. And tell us
You'll come home with a list of things you need to do. You go for a walk and try to say, I'm just going to listen to a podcast and come up with a list.
Right, exactly. Now, tell us about your podcast as well.
Well, my podcast, the original one I started, is the Brick and Mortar Reporter podcast, and it is a local business focused podcast. And I'm getting ready to start another one. It's daily podcast tips, and so what it's going to be is those 7 to 8 minute daily shows where you just learn one thing. It's kind of like step by step improving your podcast every single day.
I love that.
And so I think a lot of the podcast about podcasts are done by men out there. So I kind of almost want to say daily podcast tips for women only. But just even as a marketing, little trick there, because, the guys will be like, what are they talking about for women only? What are they doing that we don't know how to do? And then they'll listen, Exactly. But I haven't completely decided how I'm going to do that. But basically, I feel like there's so much that I get every single day just doing what I do that I've got to break it down into little nuggets and just turn around and spit it back out every single day. So
and I love that you'll have endless content.
Yeah, exactly. And the way podcasting changes, and even the way, iTunes changes, and the way everything changes, technology and what's going on, there's never a dearth of content to put out there. There's always something to talk about.
I can't wait for that one. I will be subscribing.
I'll let you know.
Exactly. As we were talking about before we went on air, people say podcasting is I feel like it's like tattoos. Once you have one, you want to do more and more.
Exactly. Like what do they call it? The Lay's potato chips. You can't eat just one, right?
Exactly.
You got to do more than one. And what you begin to see is that there can be a platform built around any topic, and whether it's the smallest niche little thing, you can build a platform and really kind of a community around that. And that's pretty cool to see because we're in an internet age where we're global, but at the same time, we can be very, very connected.
Exactly. And I love what you said, too, about considering doing it, focusing on women. Obviously, I'm all for that.
Right.
I love that idea.
Exactly.
But just this idea, too.
Well, it's coming from a woman's perspective and, dealing with some of the emotional things that we deal with, with podcasts. And those are things that other people, the guys don't understand. They don't understand how you can feel awkward mentioning that you're selling something, whenever
exactly.
we're like, I have this thing. It's boom.
I know.
You don't want to say it very loud.
Right.
I'm sorry. I'll edit that out. Just stop it.
Exactly. I was talking to this woman from an advertising company last night at an event, actually, and she said, I'm hearing more about podcasting. I know it's very new. For some people, it's still very new. And she said, but it's a lot of men in it. There aren't a lot of women hosts, and you're focusing on women entrepreneurs. What made you want to do that? And I said exactly what you just said. There's a lot of men doing it. A lot of people aren't necessarily focusing on women entrepreneurs. I said those are the exact reasons. She said, that makes sense.
And when you think about it, focusing on women, that's like the marketing companies. Women make the buying decisions for like 58% of American households or something like that. So even if it's not a, strictly woman topic, women are making the buying decisions about that kind of thing, or the key decision maker in that. So it does have some unique advantages from a marketing perspective that I kind of would like to exploit a little bit, I think.
You'll be awesome at it. Can't wait. I'm pushing for that, but I'll support you either way.
All right, I appreciate it. We'll see. I can always put for women only and then change it later if it blows up in my face. So we'll see.
Exactly. Now, what would you say the greatest lesson having a business has taught you about yourself as a woman?
Oh, my goodness. I am like most women. I struggle with my worth and feeling like many times I have to prove my value. I was not from a, group that growing up where it was, you're valuable, you're worth it. It was all, it was all of our adoration was geared very God, toward God, and we are nothing and he is everything. And so when you grow up like that, it's not that there's anything wrong with that, but it's very hard for you to then say, I am worthy. I am capable. I am enough. I can do X, Y, or Z. And so for me, being able to sort of step into that place, and even in my business right now, I struggle with, it's not even so much setting boundaries, but it is, giving people my time in a way that could be harmful to me. If you send me an email at midnight, it's very likely that I might answer you. Common sense would tell you that's probably not a really good practice to be into, because then the next time you email me at midnight, you're going to expect me to be there and you're going to be pissed if I'm not, know. And those are the type things that I deal with. And a lot of that comes from not feeling valued enough, or not feeling like it is okay for me to say, you know what, if you don't value me with these boundaries, then I don't really need you to play a big role in my life or my business. And so that's still an evolution that is coming. And I still tend to err on the side of over providing value and undercharging. And I had a client tell me one time, oh, Christy, your heart is way ahead of your wallet. And I thought, boy, that's the truth. Because that's where I'm comfortable. And so I think many times that's a very definitely a woman thing. And, I think other women probably struggle with that too. So taking time for self-care and taking time to be worthy and be enough, even if I'm not giving to others in a few minutes of my day, then it's okay.
Exactly. And what does your support network look like, speaking of that?
My spouse is a huge supporter, and I will tell you this, my father is my biggest cheerleader.
Aww.
And that is amazing to see. Even in the whole, give up my good job, move to Key West and do crazy stuff, he has been extremely supportive. And the other part that's a kind of a cool support network to have is that I have been able to provide jobs to several people in my family that are very qualified, doing this type of work. And so to be able to say to them, I have gotten myself in a bind. Can you help me out today? Or lean on them a little harder than I would like if I was dealing with an employee that wasn't a family member. I have 3 family members that are involved in our business. And so that to me, their support, they're jumping in with the mission. And I feel like they get what we're doing, and they see the vision for extremely good customer service and great customer relations and just over delivering in a way because they know me differently than a regular employee would. So in some ways,
that's beautiful.
It's kind of a different way to have support.
Now,
of course, they can always turn on you. I don't know.
Right. Things can always happen, but that could happen with anyone. Yeah, that could happen with anyone. Exactly. There's always that.
Exactly.
Now, if you think over your life and career and you had the chance to thank only one person whose support was critical to you personally or professionally, who would that be and what would you say?
Wow. Well, I will tell you, in the past couple of years now, I have had a dear friend, and her name is Dr. Clarissa Pinkola Estes, and she's the one who wrote she's a wonderful mind, but she wrote Women Who Run with the Wolves, and among many other things. But you talk about a woman that has insight, heart, wisdom, and really one of the smartest women I've ever met. And so in the last couple of years, as I've really kind of come into my own in my business, she has been an absolutely critical mentor to me. We laugh, we cut up, and we have a great time, but at the same time, every single thing is very heart driven and very, very value driven, and really about accomplishing what is your purpose on this earth. And she's very much about that. And so to see her be able to be that way, but also be very business minded and sort of instill that in me and give me the support and permission, and, and know that, this is somebody who, her books are translated into 35 different languages, and she is so widely read. And so everything that drips out of her mouth or comes out of her computer keyboard or from her hand is just absolutely beautiful. You know, you talk about a wordsmith or being able to write or read things in such a way that just gets to your heart, and she does that. And so by being able to be around her and have her influence in my business, I feel like it's called me to sort of step to a higher level. And she's an amazing lady. And I just wish that she, you know, she's, I think, 75 right now. And I wish she had another 150 years to continue to impact women, because she, you know, she really, truly has enough in here in the head and in here in the heart to continue to give for that long of time.
That's beautiful. Now, how did you connect with her?
Through podcasting.
Of course.
You know, through our Podcasters Paradise group. And, you know, to be able to be in that group and see people that, you know, are famous speakers or famous authors or famous whatever in that group coming in because they want to learn about podcasting. The rest of us normal people are in there too, you know, we're also doing it. But for whatever reason, we ended up connecting. And whenever she began picking up the phone and we call now, you know, she can call me now and we might stay on the phone 4 hours and it feels like about 30 minutes, you know, and it's a crazy thing, but it's just an amazing gift for someone like me who sits here and on my little island, you know, getting to be able to sort of learn at the feet of greatness is what I feel like it is.
That's awesome. It was divine, like we say.
It was, and we say that. We say, you know, it's amazing because she's working on her podcast too, but she's like, man, if I had never gotten in, we wouldn't even know each other if it wasn't for podcasting. Right. And you find that in those groups that you develop. I mean, even though they're online friends, you see them in person when you go to conferences and you know, get on Skype and we can see each other. We're like sitting in each other's offices talking.
Exactly.
And you get to a point where they're not just these online personas. They really are your friends.
Right. Excellent. Oh, little doggy. I love it.
There's several of them hovering around.
Right, they're ready for you to go. Well, thank you so much. This has been so much fun to talk to you in person and hear your story and your fantastic advice. And so tell people where they can find you so they know to find Team Podcast and everything that you're doing.
Absolutely. If they just go to teampodcast.com, that's probably the best place. And there is a contact form on the website. If you want to get in touch with me, it comes right into my email, and I'm pretty good about responding. If you see me respond at midnight, you need to tell me to have better boundaries. And
exactly.
No
back responding
in the morning,
at midnight for you.
But definitely contact me there. And I'm also, like I say, in the She Podcast group. Please come join us there on the Podcasters Paradise group that we're in. I'll see you there and anyone else that wants to really put an investment in your podcasting. And anytime I can help anyone, I'm always willing to do that.
You're fantastic. Thank you so much. I really
You're very welcome.
You.
It's been an honor.
I'll give you the last word. What would you say is a parting piece of advice from you to our listeners?
The parting piece of advice I would have is just, you know, go through that next open door. Don't wait for, you know, someone to come drag you out kicking and screaming. You know, if you feel like there's something or something that's sort of been yearning or a heart pull or a tug that you should be doing, just keep going through that next open door and know that before you know it, you'll look back and you'll have taken 10 more steps, you know, and you can't say, well, I'll do it when the kids get out of college, or I'll do it when I get out of debt, or when whatever. Just say, you know, today, can I take a baby step? It doesn't even have to be a big step. It could be, could I take a baby step toward that? And every single day, just string those baby steps together. And before you know it, you'll be way further down the path than you ever anticipated.
Excellent. Christy, thank you so much. Hold on.
You're very welcome.
Thank you. Hold on just a second. All right. I hope you enjoyed that episode. Thank you so much for listening. What you can do now is go over to supportissexypodcast.com to find other episodes with other inspiring women entrepreneurs that I've interviewed in the past. Check them out there. And while you're there, please also make sure that you subscribe to my email list so that you don't miss an episode. You don't miss any of the great resources that I share with people. I won't spam your inbox, only the good stuff. So be sure to go to supportissexypodcast.com, click on subscribe at the top, and sign up for our email list. And until next time, you know what to do. Go out there and create something sexy, and I'll talk to you soon. Take care.